Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And on this segment of the show, ladies and gentlemen, I have family law attorney Cindy Perusse, president and principal owner of Perusse Family Law and Mediation Services in Denver and Minneapolis. Now, Cindy is an authority in the area of family law, and we'll be talking to you today about a very interesting topic of how to save on legal fees in the divorce process. So, if you're one of the many unfortunate divorcing couples in the Denver, Colorado and Minneapolis, Minnesota area, it might be a good idea for you to stop what you're doing, down tools, log out of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or anything else which may cause a distraction. Maybe even pick up a notepad and pen and get ready to take some notes as you listen in to what Cindy has to share with you for the next 15 to 20 minutes or so. So with that said, let's not keep her waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Cindy.
Hi, Stuart. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. Now, Cindy, I know how busy you are, so let's just jump straight in with our first question. If you could you just briefly describe the kinds of people who you serve and, let's say the various types of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for your help?
I would say over my 20 years of practice, I have both men and women come to me, and I guess they mostly between the ages, I would say, of 30 and 50. They're middle income to above middle income families with kids. They're married between, I would say, 10 and 20 years of marriage is the general population that I serve. They come to me mostly for divorce, or probably second place would be post-divorce issues like parenting time or modification of child support.
Okay, so it goes without saying that anything you share with us today, Cindy, is not legal advice or legal assistance. So with that said, and I'm sure there are many situations, many examples you've seen within your 20 years of practicing family law. However, what's the most common misconception you come across while you're out there working with divorcing couples?
I would say when it comes to working with lawyers, that the common misperception is that clients have no control over the cost of their divorce. And that's really not true. And there's lots of ways that they can rein in costs during the divorce process and reduce the stress, the financial burden of a divorce.
So based on what you just shared with us then, Cindy, and obviously keeping your client's confidentiality in mind, could you share an example of how you've helped someone who came to you with that misconception or with that challenge that you just described, and what kind of transformational results you were able to gain for them?
Well, I had a client come to me for an initial consultation. Mm-hmm. And he had been married a number of years and kids and was just worried about how this was all going to shake out in a divorce. He had a stack of blank forms and paperwork and kind of tried to lay it out and explain to me his circumstances. And in an initial consultation, the two questions I get asked the most are, one, how much is it going to cost? And two, how long is it going to take? And so I went through the process of explaining to this client how he could best help himself in the divorce before it even starts. And what I advised him to do and what I advise all clients to do generally is really get a handle on your finances. And organize yourself before you start the process. And that means organizing, knowing what you have as far as your assets, knowing what you have as far as debts, and knowing what the values of those assets and debts are. And he went, and it wasn't for him the right time to start the divorce process, but what the advice I gave him, he went away with that and came back to me 6 months later, completely organized in his mind, organized with his finances, and ready to do the process efficiently and quickly. And it really made a difference in the stress level of his, in the stress level going through the divorce.
And just how important is that then, Cindy? Because you mentioned a reduced stress level. I mean, what you helped this particular client with is quite a dry topic. Saving money during the process of divorce. However, the stress level, how important is that? What kind of effect does that have throughout the whole divorce process?
Well, that is really one of the huge concerns, because it can be a long process and it can be very expensive. Attorneys are not cheap, as most people know, and it's the process of putting together somebody's life and then dividing it is very time consuming. So there are some ways to control that and have a feeling of control over the cost of the legal process. And I like to give people several tips about that to help them through that, because it can cost several thousand dollars a month, depending on the type of divorce. And people generally don't have that extra income to throw at legal fees. They have other expenses. So it's very stressful. And I think knowing how to just work efficiently and quickly with your divorce attorney can really take that level of stress out of it a bit anyway.
Okay, thanks for sharing that with us, Cindy. That's going to be very useful for the divorcing couples listening into the show right now. Now, as a reminder, Cindy, today's topic is how to save on legal fees in the divorce process. Now, with that in mind, and again, for those divorcing couples who are wanting to know more, what's the most common but unknown pitfall that you'd like to bring to their attention today? Yeah, let's say no matter what, no matter how they're feeling, no matter how they feel unfairly treated, what's the most common pitfall that they need to be aware of, Cindy?
I think the most common pitfall is not knowing what you own, believe it or not. Not knowing what you own in terms of assets. For instance, there are people who don't know whether they or their spouse has a 401k or an IRA. Do they have a pension? Is there a whole life insurance policy that has a cash value? Does one of the parties have a deferred compensation plan? How about stocks or stock options? What about frequent flyer miles? You wouldn't believe how many people fight over who gets the frequent flyer miles. The value of cars. So I think the biggest pitfall is not knowing what you own. Also not knowing what you owe. What is owed on the mortgage? What is owed on credit cards? A lot of couples have separate credit cards, and they don't get the statements if their name's not on the card. But it doesn't mean it's not a marital debt. Just because your name's not on a credit card. So you need to know those things. Is there a line of credit on the house still? What is the balance of that? What do you owe on the car if you have an auto loan? So I think there's that's a pitfall, that people come into a divorce situation not really knowing what they own. And that unknown is what can stress people out, because they don't know what they own. They don't know how to get that information. And so there's that mystery. And I think getting a handle on that before you go to an attorney and start a divorce will help tremendously in reducing costs and getting through the divorce process faster. Because one of the most time-consuming pieces of a divorce actually is gathering the information. It's called discovery, but it's a process of getting information from the other party, gathering your own information and providing it to the other party, assets and debt, and knowing those values. And that is really will take you a long way toward saving hours and hours of fees that a attorney would have to do to process that information, or a paralegal would have to do. So the more a person can do upfront on their own, the better, knowing the values of what your assets are through statements or other information, and knowing the same with debts. And I have written an article to help people about how to prove property values without an expert. And there's lots of free ways to find out values for every piece of property that you own. The exception would be a pension, but everything else can be done on your own and can be done free of charge, mostly online or through your own statements. So that goes a long way to helping save costs.
Now, you're saying not knowing what you own or what you owe is one of the biggest pitfalls that you've come across out there while working with divorcing couples. And I'm thinking about the people who are listening in right now. I mean, some of them are divorcing couples, obviously, but we also have a wide array of people who are quite happily married at this particular point. Is it prudent for them now, even though they're happily married, to start going through that discovery process just in case? Should they start documenting that already, as opposed to people who actually find themselves in divorce and only then are they motivated to go through that discovery process you mentioned? Could you just expand a little bit on that for us, please, Cindy?
Yes, I think absolutely. Even if you're not thinking of divorce at this moment, to know your finances. And believe it or not, there's a lot of traditional couples out there, or not even traditional, but there's couples that each of them have a role. Like one spouse always takes care of the bills and the other spouse does other things. So there is a lot of that where one spouse just allows the other person to kind of run with the finances or manage the investments or what have you, with no bad intention. It's just how they live their life. But what happens is, it doesn't matter if you're going through a divorce. What if your spouse passes away or becomes incapacitated? You really do need to know what you own, where those assets are, and be able to access those things. So yes, I think it's really important to understand your own finances, both your own individually owned ones and your spouse's owned, as well as the joint.
Okay, so even though we're talking divorce, you heard it from Cindy yourself. Even if you're happily married, head over heels, in love, it's just good practice to know what you own or what you owe. So take it from Cindy. She is the expert for today. Now, Cindy, you mentioned earlier that you have been in practice for 20 years, and I can't begin to imagine some of the things that you've experienced within that period of time. Could you just briefly share with us, Cindy, is this something that you really love doing, even after 20 years?
Yeah, believe it or not, I do like family law, and I'm one of the, I don't think everyone can say that, but I have the personality for it. I don't mind the emotions that go along with divorce. I'm also a child of divorced parents, and that was a difficult time for me and my three sisters, and a scary time. And but you know what? The thing is that everyone comes out on the other side okay. I mean, believe it or not, they do. And I tell my clients that the first thing I said, no matter what happens, you will be okay. This isn't heart surgery where people die. Have a chance of dying. You're not going to die.
Right,
You're not going to die. This won't be fun, but you will be okay. And my job is to protect my client's interests and make sure they come out of it with a fair settlement and with the dignity of their family preserved, basically, because the children are always the most important piece of this. And so that's always center to me when I'm counseling my clients. But I do find joy in it. I really do.
Yeah, so it's never another day at the office, is it? It's always something new, always a new challenge, and always a new opportunity to help these people who find themselves in the unfortunate position of divorce.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Cindy, it's great that you just shared a little bit about your personal side. And I'm sure for the listeners who have been listening in, they're wanting to know a little bit more about yourself, and especially in terms of your background and your education and your experience as it all relates to the topic of family law. So if you could just spend a few moments going over that so that our listeners can get to know even more about Cindy.
Yes, well, as I said, I have over 20 years of practice in exclusively family law. And I am licensed in 3 states, in California, Colorado, and Minnesota. I have a bachelor's degree from UCLA in California and my law degree from Hamline University School of Law in Minnesota. I've taken advanced trial courses through the ABA. I have completed family law mediation training and early neutral evaluation training, which is another form of alternative dispute resolution. Mediation is also part of my practice, and more people are choosing mediation. Almost every court will insist on mediation before litigation, which is a good thing. And I'm an active member of all 3 bar associations in the states where I'm licensed, and that's me.
So we're coming towards the end of the show, and I'd just like you just for a moment just to picture the kinds of divorcing couples who come to you for your guidance, Cindy, and they're wanting to know more about saving legal fees throughout the divorce process. Now, with that in mind, what would be your final thoughts that you'd like to impart before we close out with our last question for today?
My best piece of advice would be to prepare for your divorce ahead of time by organizing your finances, and also settling as much as you can with your spouse ahead of time and at the outset of your case, if you're able to communicate effectively with your spouse. And just leave the hard stuff for the lawyers. That would be my advice to everybody.
Thank you so much for that, Cindy. So if there is somebody out there who does want to know more about saving more on legal fees in the divorce process, how would they find you, Cindy? Where would they get in touch with you?
Stewart, I can be reached through my website of perusselaw.com for my Colorado clients, or perusselaw.biz for my Minnesota clients.
Okay, and do you have phone numbers for each practice?
Yes, in Colorado, 303-900-4112. And my Minnesota office is 952-921-5878.
Excellent. And just one final thing then, Cindy. Earlier on in our discussion, you mentioned that you wrote an article. Could you share the details about that article? How would people be able to find that?
It's on my website. The article was published through the ABA Family Law Journal. The title of it is Evidence Without Experts. And there's a link to that article and a PDF file on both of my websites. People can read up on how to find values for their assets free of charge and online using the internet and their own resources. And that would be helpful in putting together their list of assets and debt.
Now that sounds like a really great resource, so I will ensure that a direct link to that article is provided on the Impact Makers Radio website also. So we're coming towards the end of the show then, Cindy. For those people who are out there, whatever you're doing right now, maybe you're driving, maybe you're sat in heavy traffic. I sure hope that's not the case. Or maybe you're tuning in from home, or you're out taking a run and you're listening in on your personal device. That is all we have time for today. Again, that was family law attorney Cindy Perusse. Thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today, Cindy. You certainly have demonstrated that you are a true educator and advocate for your client's success. So thank you.
Thank you, Stewart.
You are so welcome. And even more importantly, I'd like to say a big thank you to you, the listener, for joining us on this very insightful and informative discussion with one of the top family law attorneys in Denver, Colorado, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. Don't forget her name. It is Cindy Perusse. Make sure you do check her out. Give her a call. Send her an email. I'm sure you're going to be in a great place to take your first steps towards addressing your situation. So again, I'm Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading divorce professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.